welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this lovely Thursday. And thank you especially to Emilia, who's here from UserPilot to talk to us about product adoption, user onboarding. As a quick introduction for me, I'm Georgia. I'm the head of customer here at Candu. We've been hosting this webinar series for a while, and we're always really lucky to have these great guests come in and talk to us about all the interesting ways that they're helping users onboard, do deeper feature adoption, learn more about how to help users use SaaS products effectively. We're really lucky to have Emilia.
It's great to be here with you today. It feels like we're doing something very complementary. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to talk with you about it. So basically what I do, I'm heading marketing at UserPilot, which is a product growth platform, mostly for product teams, broadly speaking. So product marketers and product managers, also UX designers, customer success managers, basically helping them guide their users towards certain key activation points, features, right, and help them adopt more of the product and get more value to basically the products they are using. So onboarding is a big use case for us, but not only. And I think today's webinar is a great opportunity to actually draw attention to more advanced aspects of onboarding, which is secondary feature onboarding and continuous onboarding. So we're going to talk a bit about product adoption. Myself, I hail from product and marketing background. So I have worked as a marketer building a few early stage products. So I really enjoy both parts of the equation. It's super exciting for me to be in UserPilot because I get to see all the different use cases and write up case studies about that.
So I think today at Candu, we spend a lot of time thinking about sort of the initial user onboarding. And one of the things we end up talking to our clients a lot about that I think you'll be able to speak to really well is this idea of the onboarding doesn't stop when you've completed onboarding. So often as a SaaS company, there's a million things that you can show people, and you certainly shouldn't show them all in the first experience. It will overwhelm your users. And so there's sort of one set of onboarding that is about getting users to start using your product. And then as a SaaS company, you're always working with people and you're always trying to add more value. And so there's this idea that I think you have a lot of expertise in, which is around feature adoption. So I was wondering if maybe you could sort of give us an overview of how you think about feature adoption. What is it? How do you define it? And then we can dive into sort of how UserPilot is doing things for that.
So you mentioned something very important, which I see as a common mistake in product companies, especially SMB, B2B product companies, that they want to kind of show the users everything in their first run user experience, which obviously overwhelms them. And usually the traditional way to do that, build a long step-by-step linear product tour that would just take the users through all the amazing features of the product in 10 minutes, which is obviously not the way we learn, right? And it kind of violates the principles of, human psychology of learning, right? So when it comes to using specific products, we learn by doing. So in the first run user experience, you just need to get the users to the key activation points, right? Be different for different roles, different jobs to be done, especially that. So the first step is to really map your user journey and understand what the different types of user personas need to achieve in order to activate. So you would limit your initial onboarding to literally adopting 1 to maybe 3 features, right, that are absolutely necessary to get to the aha moment and experience the value of the product firsthand. But obviously most are not micro SaaS products, and they consist of more than 2 or 3 features. So what do you do if you have a more complex product or platform? You have a lot of different kinds of solutions, features, etc., that will continuously drive more value for the user. Well, you need to somehow onboard them on the secondary features as well. You can't do that in this initial product store. So what do you do? So at UserPilot, we encourage our users to create a mix of proactive and reactive onboarding experiences. And these are different in that proactive, as the name itself suggests, you proactively guide the user towards certain features. Reactive means you kind of set up pantyhose and little traps for the user to fall into while they're exploring your product on their own. And then you trigger these experiences very contextually when they are ready. So basically, after they have performed certain actions, which you would know by either passing a custom event to a tool like UserPilot or your other onboarding tool, or by tagging certain features on the front end. So on you would just select certain elements and say, if the user clicks on that or performs a series of steps in a funnel, right? So in a specific order, you want to show them a particular experience. To kind of give you an example that would illustrate it better, let's say in HubSpot, right, you have email sequences, and a colleague of mine has been just copying and pasting the emails to the sequences, right? And then HubSpot reacted to this usage pattern, which was not aligned with the right usage pattern for HubSpot for this particular feature, with a modal saying, tired of copying and pasting? Try our email templates, right? So this is a great example of contextual reactive secondary feature onboarding experience, which would probably encourage our colleague to explore the templates and, save time on copying and pasting and generally have a better experience with. So imagine this colleague of mine has not seen this secondary onboarding experience. He would probably continue copying and pasting the templates. And after a while, they could get tired of it, and they could feel like, okay, HubSpot is crap because it's not allowing me to automate this process and create
value add. I could do this.
Exactly. So they could either think okay, this is not more value than my email, but I'm paying for it, or they could start looking for an alternative solution, thinking that the feature is just not there. And I've seen this happen a few times with different products. Like one of the products that I worked for before I joined UserPilot was a social media scheduler post fit. And I remember just going through the churn surveys, so the exit interviews for the users, and seeing a number of users mentioned that they didn't have a calendar view in the social media scheduler, which was obviously not the case because the calendar view was there. But for some reason, that's the problem when the product manager is an engineer and does not really have a lot of background in user research. And in smaller companies, the user research is just not the biggest priority. So he put this feature switching between the list view and the calendar view in the settings, and very few users have actually been going to the settings to explore that and change that so they could see what posts they have on the calendar. And for some reasons, for some users that was the reason for churn. So planning your secondary onboarding experiences and the journey of your users that would allow them to discover more of these useful features and unlock more value as they progress through the user journey is extremely important for retention.
I think that's a great point. A couple of things that I thought were really interesting there are, one, ideally we would have unlimited control over the front end UI and could do a perfect job with it. And even in an ideal world where you can do an unbelievable amount of user testing, when you're a SaaS product that has 50 different features that different users might be really interested in, it's hard to know which ones to highlight to make sure that people get to. And so sometimes it really is about helping just empathize with users and trying to make sure that everything has its right place, that people can find it. And some of that has to do with sort of these either reactive or proactive ways of showing people things. I'm sure from a marketing perspective, I think we hear you need to show people things 7 times for them to be able to do it. And I think getting them to take action on it sort of reduces that amount of time, but it's also about just making sure that I think in initial onboarding, people kind of go through the steps trying to, and they're at such a basic level of understanding, they don't necessarily know to come back to it. And so helping them with these later cues of reminding them what your product can do and how they can do it and accomplish it is so important. I think we touched on this a little bit with your primary onboarding and your secondary onboarding, but how do you think about sort of reactive versus proactive and when to use which to help your users through the journey?
So I think proactive onboarding is better for the earlier stages of the user journey, or pointing out certain features, major features that are maybe not that intuitive that the user has not stumbled upon yet. Reactive would be better for showing smaller features or basically guiding the user that is already doing something towards more efficient behavior patterns, right? So for instance, when product managers or product marketers analyze user behavior and they see segments of the most successful users, the most active users, the users that have adopted most of the products, and they see the retention rate is very high in these user segments. They will want to kind of reverse engineer the user journey and see what the most successful users are doing and not doing versus what the least successful users in the same like role or with the same basically job to be done are doing or not doing, and then kind of these insights to build reactive experiences that would basically help these less successful users unlock more value and get to these further activation points.
I love the HubSpot example. One other thing that we've talked about a little bit, which I think when we first talked about it, didn't connect what the difference was, but a little bit about what you're saying, people learn by doing. And it's this delineation between product walkthroughs and interactive tours. I think a lot of people think exactly the same thing, and there actually is a difference. And can you speak a little bit about what's different about them, when you use each one, and why interactivity is?
So like the traditional product tours, if you were to use the travel analogy, would have like a fixed itinerary, right? So you have a certain agenda, you're following, exactly, you're not going off course, no matter if, you know, your users get like frustrated or bored with something, you have to just follow a certain path or agenda. And we found that this is not very effective, right? Because they get bored, and as long as they can, they will just press the next button. I wrote this article like called Everybody Hates Product Tours about a year ago, and just collected screenshots of people ranting about product tours in like Facebook groups and on LinkedIn. And it was hilarious because it just shows that, you know, like we are all busy. We don't have time for basically learning about features that we don't really need and want to use at the moment. So basically the role of an interactive walkthrough is to reduce the time to value, while traditional product tours often extend the time to value. So they are in fact counterproductive. They just don't do what they were designed for. I think like product management, and especially product marketing or product growth management, are still like very nascent fields. So just a few years ago, when people were building all these product tools, nobody really thought about time to value or like how to reduce it. They kind of thought more top down. Okay, we have this product, we have these 20 features. We need to make sure that the users know about them. But it's actually not important. I talked to several product managers, and it's not true that all of your users need to adopt all of your features, but they need to adopt the critical features that will allow them to be successful in your product. And how they define success with your product will basically determine what kind of experiences you need to prepare for them in their interactive walkthroughs. So what makes that walkthrough interactive is that it responds to user. And in order to create it, you really need to understand the user, right? So you need to sort of predict their behavior based on their role, based on their goal, and then try to guide them in an interactive way so they reach the value as quickly as possible.
And on that front, you know, how do you, so I think your point about, I think a lot of people at this point sort of don't really trust product tours or like any kind of popover. Sometimes the immediate response is out of it. And so how do you get buy-in from your users when you're launching a product tour or an interactive, or more importantly, an interactive tour, to let them know that this is going to be something where you'll really learn and this will save you time ultimately?
So first of all, you shouldn't like be that much in your face, right? So a traditional product tour would usually start with a modal, and it would be just a series of modals that like cover half of the screen. Sometimes you even have these product tours that start before the users can see your dashboard, right? So sometimes you have like series of questions that are just in fact a survey, an onboarding survey that is baked into your native UI, and that way you are again hampering the user in their user journey and preventing them from reaching, you know, their destination as quickly as possible. So the UI pattern you're using to interact with your users really make a difference. Instead of, you know, like covering half of your screen, just embed little tooltips that will point the user in the right direction without interrupting their flow. So they're already doing something. You don't disturb them while they're at it, but you just guide them in a very subtle way. So like I can just share my screen very quickly and show me. So this is actually the tool that I mentioned, right? I was working on before. It's a social media scheduler. So I guess most of the audience is familiar with tools like that, like Buffer or Hootsuite, right? So let's imagine I'm an already onboarded user, as I am in this case, right? And maybe I haven't posted anything in a while. I haven't scheduled anything in a while, right? So if we just like fire the Chrome extension here and create new content, here here very easily. There are two types of content that can be used for this in interactive walkthroughs. So flows are like basically series of experiences. That doesn't mean these are linear steps, right? And spotlights are just one of experiences that, can be a hotspot while sitting somewhere, right? Or a tooltip, a native tooltip. So like a tiny eye icon or question mark. I will go for the flow just to show you something. So we have a webinar, and just so I remember not to publish it by mistake. Okay, and then we have different UI patterns. So as I mentioned, modals will just like cover half of the screen. This is something we don't want or don't need in this particular case.
Modals is being really valuable for people. Is it like if there's a product announcement, or I think a lot of the people we talk to get really excited about modals. And so I'd be curious to hear sort of an expert on when they are appropriate.
There is a time and place for modals, definitely. So for instance, obviously, if you're welcoming your new users and you want to create a welcome screen, for instance, with a micro survey, so you can ask like, what do you want to achieve in this product today? Right? And they're going to tell you, well, I want to say, schedule my first post to LinkedIn, right? Or someone else will say, I want to schedule posts.
Right. Okay. So it's really making that focused on what their goal is.
Exactly.
Something about empathy, right?
And then you can literally link different flows to the answers, right? So if you have a questionnaire with radio buttons, right, depending on what they click on, you trigger a different flow, right? And that is really valuable. With product announcements, again, I would probably use a slide out, which is less intrusive, right? So if you have a look at that.
So this is when you have new things, you have advanced users who might be looking for new stuff that you're doing as a product team. Having the slide out allows them to opt in or opt out of that experience.
But it's good that you mentioned, new feature announcements and go to market, because this is something that a lot of product marketers, product managers trip themselves up on as well. And so essentially what happens after a new feature stops being a new feature, right? Like you can't keep on showing them modals
for a year and a half because people haven't looked at it yet.
I mean, you will have other features coming after that, like, product managers have shorter and shorter sprints these days, and the release cycles are very short. In order to stay competitive, you need to keep like improving your product and releasing new things. So like, what would you stack like 5 modals or slide outs to announce like 5 different features? So what happens with the new users that join your product after this feature announcement has disappeared, right? So let's imagine I have a new feature that is like the social tips calendar, which would help more advanced users that already know like how to use the basic features.
These are the core features that aren't part of your user onboarding, but are really helping people get deeper into the product, right?
But let's have a look at a more advanced feature, right? So this is a feature for users that already know how to schedule something to social media, that already have linked their accounts, right? Because otherwise they wouldn't need it, but that maybe don't have time to create content regularly, right? And just need something to make sure that their audience doesn't think the company has died, right? So every now and again, they may want to go in here and tap into these post templates with the right hashtags that are already prepared for them. And let's imagine this is a new feature, right? So you would use the slide out, say, or a modal as a feature announcement, but once it disappears and a new user joins your product, they have already done the initial new user onboarding, you still want them to adopt the secondary feature once they have gotten to this stage in the user journey. And this is when modals or slide outs don't really work anymore. This is where you will be much better off creating a more, say, interactive, reactive experience like driven action, for instance.
And what's a driven action versus a tooltip in your world?
Well, it's quite similar, but a driven action is basically a tooltip that only like goes away when you have performed the action. So it really drives you to perform the action. So let's say running out of content ideas, check out these templates. So this would appear reactively to a user that has logged in, but maybe they haven't posted anything in a while, and you can kind of sense that they are struggling a bit. You could make it more prominent by just like graying out the background a bit. So, in that sense, it still doesn't interrupt. It helps the user basically, discover the secondary features that would give them more value and maybe foster behaviors that correlate with retention.
And you're segmenting all of this, right, on basically who the user is, what they've already achieved, what they have to achieve.
Yeah, totally. To go to the dashboard. So say you want to publish this experience, you can just go to your audience and you can define the segments in advance. So say I want to show it only to people who are in the pro and agency basically segment, or I can make it even more refined. So say custom events.
Got it. So based on what they've done.
What they have done exactly or what they haven't done, right? Probably even more important.
I think one of the core takeaways for me from this is that so often as product managers or marketers, we're gold on how many people adopt a feature. And so our metrics kind of distort what we think we should do, which is to get everybody onto the feature right away. And so much of it is really understanding what will drive value for different users. And you have a lot of different users, and figuring out how to make sure that you're targeting content correctly so that you're not spamming people constantly and they kind of like push you into the background, but how you're actually continuing to not just a user onboarding, but forever as a SaaS platform, drive value to your users without needing to do, I think of this a lot from a customer success standpoint, but not needing to do a call every time you release a new feature to make sure that people see it, and how to actually get your app and your UI to do some of the work, the heavy lifting for you to get that across the line.
So as you mentioned that, it like kind of came to my mind that, you know, we are sort of moving towards metrics that we can use to basically track success in secondary feature adoption. So, you know, like I would say, as you mentioned, like not all users need to adopt every feature, and you need to define these goals, right, for different user segments. So basically what we do at UserPilot is that we allow you to define these goals, right? And then when you build the experiences, you can tie them to a specific goal, right? So you can like link this flow that we have created here, for instance, to this particular goal.
And the goal is an action that you want the user to take in your case.
Exactly. But you can like specify the goals also in terms of which user segments you want the action to take, right? So you can say,
so it's not always like 100%. I need 100% of people my users to have done this. It's like, I need the admins to do this, or I need my
totally. And then you see the percentage of basically feature adoption in a specific segment. So you can define exactly, you can even like basically divide your users into cohorts. So say you're going to say only admins who signed up between the 1st of September and the 30th of September.
Oh, okay, right? Yes. You're not saying the people who signed up 3 years ago to be focusing on this feature. It's not really
exactly. And you can do cohort analysis that way, because then you can just like duplicate this goal and set different dates and see based on like different iterations in your secondary onboarding experiences. For instance, if you have a larger product team, you may want to have a product growth manager that would be dedicated to this project. So actually improving feature adoption and retention in specific user segments. And they can then basically track how the adoption changes between the cohorts depending on what they have experimented with.
Great. I think we talk all the time, or at least like in the world that I've lived in, people talk all the time about A/B testing. It seems to be like a thing to talk about, which is great. It's really valuable. But I actually think sometimes, especially at earlier stage companies where you don't have as many clients coming in, where you can't get a huge volume, cohort analysis is actually a really cool other way to do this kind of analysis of seeing how a change impacts users. So I don't know if everyone's done cohort analysis before, but basically you break out your user segments by a time cohort. So like a week or a month, and then you look at the week coming out of that and see how many people adopt a feature. It's like it's a fun graph to look at, but it's great. It's a great indicator too, I think, of, you know, if you're not doing A/B testing, or if you're doing it on top of A/B testing, it's another great way to find out how much a feature impacts users' behavior.
The cohort analysis is broader because, you know, it can be affected by like changes to your native UI. It can be affected to even changes to your marketing strategy. So say you started going after bigger accounts, more mature customers that like are doing better. So I would say like if you just want to be sure that what is working is the changes to your experience or just your experience, like an A/B test as opposed to a split test, right, would compare, you know, the experimental condition to a null condition, right? So in that case, like you could just use this automated A/B test here to do a split split test, then it requires more complicated setup.
That's a great breakdown too of A/B testing is it's like for a very specific single thing, where cohort analysis, you can really do these bigger strategic changes as a full analysis. Well, I think we're a little over the half an hour, but this has been really, really excellent. If anyone has questions, you can throw them in the chat now if you have another minute or two, but this has been really informative about all of the different ways that sort of this secondary feature adoption happens. I think people are becoming more and more aware of it, and it's a really important part of doing user onboarding and getting people deeper into your product and finding ways to make sure that they're finding the value that they want. And I think we talked about it, a lot of it just has to do with understanding your users' needs and what will help them the most. They get the, like you're building things to provide value, and making sure they can find the things that provide them value when you're building so much different stuff is really, I think, an important thing for SaaS companies to be thinking about all the time.
Just one kind of last thing that I think would be worth mentioning. And so, like instead of using modals or slide outs for feature announcements, you could just like bake announcements into your UI, like, and
Candu shout out.
Like you can easily do that.
So with Candu, a lot of what we're doing is doing these sort of embedded components. So if you want to do an onboarding dashboard or an announcement bar to sort of flag things within your UI, Candu is another option for that. So it gives you as a marketer or as a product manager or as a designer some control over the UI itself instead of popover tools. And so I think a lot of that has to do more with if there are components where you want people to be able to come back to them pretty regularly. So sometimes it's like an onboarding checklist. That's sort of a use case where Candu is really valuable. Or often we'll actually see with something like UserPilot, people will add a button to the page so that their users can launch a product tour or an interactive tour when it makes sense to them. So we can kind of help you bake it more into their flow based on what they're looking for. So I think they're very complementary products.
It was great chatting with you, Georgia. I feel like this half an hour went so quickly. I noticed. We could probably talk about it for.
I can talk about secondary user onboarding for 3 days, but thank you so much. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, please let us know. We're obviously always happy to talk about this, and let's talk more.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Georgia. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah. Talk to you all soon.